On one occasion, I've seen your interview in your one of your publications, the most important one, and you said that this, what's happening here, is very important step forward in restoring a restorative process. What did you mean about this?
Well, what I meant was because this is one of our sacred sites and it's been desecrated, this is an example of what happens beyond High Park many times, many places. And because it's in a park, there's no reasons for them to be being the way they are about the whole site, the whole issue, because they're not building anything here. They're not going to put up a condo here. They're not going to, you know what I'm saying? So they're not planning on building anything here at this place at all. So because of that, it should make it easier to resolve this issue, because you don't have developers behind it in trying to stop it from being recognized as a site, because they have a lot of money involved in building or constructing something there. That's not the case here. So because of all those things, this will help to preserve and protect all those other sites that should be protected before they start building on them and destroying them elsewhere. So that's why this is very important, because that will set the stage for change, because right now there's very little in their laws to protect sites like this. If, for example, once you find an artifact of any kind, especially an arrowhead or a spear point, the site can be registered as an archaeological site through the Ministry of Culture. There is a process that they have to go through to do that now, but that's really all it takes, is just one artifact to register a site. Do it all the time. And many of those kind of sites, because they're hunt camps or fishing camps, very old ones, they don't usually find anything else at that site other than the spear point in some cases. So they won't find burials, because unless somebody died there and was buried there, but that's not going to be happening too much in those kind of sites. So therefore, that's why the ministry will register an archaeological site based on one item. So they will not necessarily dig the site any further to determine what's there, to find any burials, especially if it's a 10,000-year-old paleo site, because in those cases the paleo people did not bury their dead. They cremated their dead and scattered the ashes around. So the only other thing that would indicate that there are burials there is the presence of red ochre, even though they may or may not find any bone fragments or bone. But once you find red ochre in a given spot, that's an indicator that there is a burial there. This is widely known throughout the whole world. There are people throughout various cultures in the world that also built mounds, not just us, and also use red ochre for burials. So it's a common knowledge that people use this. It's not something that nobody else knows about but us, but there are many documents available to prove that it is used as a burial substance. Mr. Williamson, on the other hand, has destroyed many of our sites, even with the presence of red ochre and bone fragments at those sites, just because there wasn't any fully intact human remains at those sites. So on his scale of importance, it goes to a very low bottom of the scale when there's no human bodies there to be exhumed or studied or whatever. But if there's only tiny bone fragments or just red ochre, to him it's not important. The site gets written off and gets clearance to be developed based on that alone. We've seen many of his places where he's been, and they're little tiny test pits that don't even go down 6 inches in the ground. You're not going to find burials 6 inches from the top of the ground. So he's done this in Hamilton, he's done this in Vaughan, he's done this here in Toronto, he's done this in Kingston. Wherever he's been, that's the method that he uses to determine whether a site is a site or not. And then invariably what happens is when he gives it clearance, then when they bring in the dozers and the earth movers, they start finding things that he missed because he didn't go down deep enough in the soil. So therefore they have to end up calling in another archaeologist who is more competent than Mr. Williamson and ASI, and to try to determine what's at the site. Then they have to stop the construction because he missed a lot of things. He missed burials, he missed entire village sites, when other archaeologists have been able to find these village sites and burial sites with no problem. So that lends to a question of why he misses all these things. A big question. Puts a question behind his name and his credibility as a archaeologist who should be listened to. And this is another point that you raised, is why are people listening to him? Why is the city listening to this man? Well, I think the best answer to that question is that they know that he doesn't find things. They know that he writes things off like nothing, and so therefore if they support him in that and continue to support him here, then that will still continue. But once someone like ourselves gets acknowledgement on the fact that it is what it is from the level of the city, then that opens up a whole can of worms for Mr. Williamson and all the other sites that he's missed and destroyed because of his lack of whether it's experience or knowledge, or he makes so many ridiculous statements like that the Taiaiako'n people did not bury their dead in mounds. Well, how did we bury our dead then? If we didn't bury them in mounds, did they just disappear in thin air? This is what Chief Arnie said when he found out what Mr. Williamson was printing in the paper. He got very incensed and angry at him, and he said, this guy is a bonehead, and he doesn't know anything about our culture or about how we buried our dead, because we did bury in mounds. And it's well documented in many sources that we buried in mounds. So, this guy, he just seems to pull statements out of the air, put them in the paper, and trying to get a following of people behind him to believe him. And then in the meantime, what he says is not backed up with facts, not backed up with documentation. I mean, had he have done the proper documentation on High Park, he would have found that there are burials throughout the rest of the park that have been documented, and because of their close proximity, that would be an indicator that there are burials elsewhere in the park, not just in that one spot. Originally, there were over 100. And because of the development that's been done in the park already with putting in roadways and parking lots and restaurants, things like that, part of those mounds are gone. Like the Grenadier restaurant is built on part of the Bear Mound, and the parking lot is built on part of the Bear Mound. So what's left is just part of the body that you see. That's that big hump up there just north of the parking lot, and the head of the bear is across the street, and that's what's left of that mound. So it's just examples like that and throughout the park where people have altered our mound sites without knowledge of what they were. And now that we're saying, okay, there's 57 mounds in the park, that alerts them to the fact that, okay, you can't just willy-nilly develop here, develop there in this park without there being some sort of consultation with our people on this before it's done. And that's what we have a problem with Mr. Williamson, is he uses people that are not First Nation, and and they try to promote themselves as First Nation. They're not. And people that are fake chiefs that are not chiefs at all, and fake chiefs that have created these Anishinaabeg communities within the last 4 years that aren't recognized by the government as being a legitimate community. So these are the kinds of people that he uses to do his business all over the place. He formulated this First Nations founding circle about 7-8 years ago, and the people that are on that First Nations founding circle are either not native at all, or their interest is very corrupt when it comes to the representation of our people. And one of the people that he had on that council was Barb Harris from Six Nations. She works for the band council, or used to, and she hid a lot of the documentation from the Confederacy of what she was doing up here, didn't share it. And they've asked for this documentation many times, and she's never provided it to them. So she's been up here in Toronto doing things for many years without consulting our clan mothers and our chiefs or sharing that information. So that's kind of where we came along, Taiaiako'n Historical Preservation Society, many years ago. We started to gather all this documentation that was going on in Toronto and presenting it to the Confederacy directly. And because of showing that appreciation for sharing that knowledge and documentation, they had us be their go-to people for what was going on here in the park. So right now, like the way it works is, because Arnie can't travel here all the time, and Donna can't be here, and the clan mothers can't be here, they've set us in charge of gathering the information, and if their interests need to be represented, we represent them. If they give us that go-ahead to do that, we will do that. I carry wampum. I carry a wampum string that was given to me by my people, which gives me the authority to speak for Chief Arnie and the clan mothers when they ask me to. Okay, so this whole thing of Rastia'ta'non not having authority, not being recognized, not being this, not being that, is all Ota. You know, I am Seneca Wolf Clan. That's who my mother was, and my grandmother, and on back on my mother's side. And again, these people that are saying these things are people that are non-native or don't have a clan and a nation themselves. So, you know, all this stuff that they're putting out there, you know, I could very easily take all of them to court and sue them for libel and slander, because what they're doing inevitably is participating in the destruction of the site by the words that they're putting out there. It's not correct. We haven't done that. We're peaceful people. We don't like to go the way of the white man's court. We want to try to resolve things in a good way through the art of peace and negotiation, which is part of our great law. And it's quite obvious that these people that are working against us have no knowledge of that, because they're not walking that way. If they were walking that way, they would be here supporting us and the ancestors, instead of discrediting what's here and what's not here, you know, because the ancestors have a way of taking care of people and situations like that. So in time, those people that are doing these things, some not so nice things will happen to them because of that energy they're putting out there. It's common knowledge amongst our traditional and medicine people that whatever you put out in the world will come back around to you. So since they're putting all this negativity out into the world against us and against me and against Taiaiako'n Historical Preservation Society and the ancestors, eventually all that negative energy is going to come right back around to them, and in some cases tenfold, because each mound site has a blessing and a curse that the ancestors put in it when they built it. So when people start disturbing these sites and they open up that area where that curse has been put in the land, anybody who goes there and touches that will get sick, will be harmed from it, their families will be harmed from it, and that's just the way it is. That's the medicine of that particular site. Each mound site has a Medea stationed there that was put there by the ancestors to watch over that site for time immemorial. There's an old man that stands over there by the entrance all the time. Yes, he does travel back and forth to the spirit world, but he spends most of his time here watching over the site. And there's been many people here that have come here and have seen him and talked with him and given tobacco to him. I have myself. So I'm not delirious. You know, people might try to say, oh, you're delirious, you're nuts, you know. But no, that's not just me that's seen him. There's been many others that see him. So are they all delirious? Are they all nuts? So anyway, and we've seen, like, some of us have those gifts to be able to see into the other side. So when we go to these places, we can see those people that are there. And be it there at those sites. Like even up at the Bear Mound, there's people that have gone there to do ceremony. They say, oh, we can see the ancestors coming from all directions, many of them coming from all directions to come to that place up there while we're doing ceremony. So that's just the way it was 3,000 years ago. And our people in the spirit world are still doing it here. That's what makes this place very special. And there's also medicine plants here that are growing in the park that are out of their normal natural range, such as sassafras. Sassafras is a more southern growing tree, but there's a few sassafras trees growing in the park here. And some of those medicines that came from other places that don't naturally grow here were brought here by our people over time and planted here. So that's another reason why this place is very special to us. You know, it's not just a place where people come and walk their dogs and do their jogging and eat out at the Grenadier restaurant and that sort of thing, you know, that we want to get beyond that, because there's a rich history here. People need to know about it. People need to embrace it and have respect for it instead of poo-pooing it and discrediting it. Because what we're doing here is for the benefit of all, not just benefiting me or Taiaiako'n Historical Preservation Society or Six Nations. It goes way beyond that, the benefits, by recognizing this site for what it is. And no, it's not a BMX park. It never was, and it's never gonna be. Nyawa, Ona.
Thank you very much for sharing it with me.
Yes.
I will try to share it with our readers, with other people, and what was most important and what I have a good feeling about this. Since it started here, I sense willingness to share with other communities why you are here and what is the place, what meaning has this place. We didn't know it before. We were misled by many media, not all media, but many media. Right now everything is more clear. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We always like to be open to share to those who want to learn. One of the biggest ways of addressing many of the issues here is for people to go to our website, www.taiaiako'n, that's Taiaiako'n.wordpress.com, and we have quite a bit of documentation, pictures and information on this site and other sites that relate to this site, because there is a connection with this site to other sites on Turtle Island. And that's important for people to know because this is not just a standalone site with no connection to anything else. The Serpent Mound in Ohio, which is a very well recognized and visited by many site and is a historical site through the Ohio Historical Society, there is very much respected and very much honored for what it is. People come from all over the world to see the site. It's a tourist spot, very hot tourist spot. And because it's one of the largest effigy mounds, snake effigy mounds in North America. And it's been well preserved. Unfortunately, this one hasn't. And we're trying to get this one as close to that one as possible.